All right, this is the parent workshop for March 25th for Fearless Warriors. We're going to kick things off. I am so excited to bring Ashley on, Coach Carter. She's been on the podcast, and I've been connected with her for the past 2.5 years. And currently, she is the hitting coach for Hampton University, which is a Division I HBCU in Hampton, Virginia. Coach Carter is also a mental performance coach and a behavioral specialist. She specializes in the DISC as well, which I love. And she's a great friend of mine. So let's kick it off. Ashley, do you want to give us the 1-2 punch? What do you got going on Tuesdays?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. First of all, I'm glad you guys are here joining and looking forward to answering questions. So, I also run my own program called the 360 Athlete, where we develop complete athletes. I say that means we focus on the human, the student, and the competitor. I truly believe that our athletes are mostly struggling with self-doubt and identity. So we have to figure out how to first navigate what their strengths are, who they are on and off the field, and then also how do they own those things, and then how do they, when things don't go well, be resilient in that process. So that program kind of works through that. I also, in that same program, help athletes understand what it requires or takes of them to stand out in social media, in emails to college coaches, in camps, and things like that. So on Tuesday nights, I have a parent Facebook group called the 360 Athlete, and we go live in there every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I just let people ask questions and I answer them. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I have going on. So tonight I'll jump off of this and jump right onto that. So,
Well, we're super pumped to have you. We actually asked ahead of time. We have a list of questions that our parents submitted in our Facebook group. I've loved watching your Tuesday lives because one of the things that I really feel like you do such an amazing job of is that you're not just speaking recruiting one-sided, like you're on the other side. And I have been blown away. We've had some cool conversations, just you and I, about, how many emails you're getting, what stands out as a coach who's in charge of recruiting, and more specifically, like, what are you looking for as a hitter? I think the game has changed a lot more too, where like we need to recruit hitters and we need to recruit people. And I'm sure we're going to get into that. So let's just open it up first to you guys, since you're here live. Who wants to go first, and what questions do you have? And if you want me to read your question, you can let me know that too. Let's go, Kelly. Let's fire them away.
Okay. Thanks for being here, Coach Ashley.
yeah.
This is kind of a specific question. My daughter is an 8th grader, so we're just, moving in. She's like 2029. So trying to be prepared. And I see a lot on social media. I see a lot of athletes who have recognition from different media groups and things like best pictures of class of 29, best, infielders. And I just wondered, is that something that college coaches take into consideration or look at?
That's a really great question. First of all, I'm so happy that you didn't say that my daughter's not at that point yet of being recruited. So I'm so glad at 8th grade you said that she is in that part of starting to get stuff together. So first of all, kudos to y'all for that. I think there's 2 layers to that. I would say it does not hurt to be ranked and in some sort of recognized in some sort of capacity. I would say it doesn't weigh that heavy depending on the outlet, but also like at 8th grade, it doesn't weigh that heavy. I think it's more about if she is ranked and we go look at her, what is her video showing around her rank? And if she's not ranked still, when we go look at her social media, what is it showing about her skill level at that age? So I think like it can be a great help to push us to look at her, but I think at the same time it doesn't weigh as heavy as far as like, oh, we have to be on her, let's put her on our list. Like it's more of a just a like, hey, a flashing light, like, oh, well, let's go see what that's talking about. Good question.
Thank you. Yeah. The reason I ask is because my daughter plays in a program. It seems like some programs, the coaches are more inclined to nominate their athletes, and
Yes.
then other programs, the coaches are busy coaching and doing other things and they don't focus on that. So
Yes.
Wasn't sure.
I'm also glad that you said that because um I think that's part of the process that you should be going through right now in eighth, ninth grade is like what are the teams, what are the coaches and the teams providing as far as exposure to for your athlete. I think if they have the goals of playing at a high level, you kind of have to be more, I don't want to say selfish, but you have to be more self-reflective on is this current program, although maybe her friends are on the team, maybe she's used to it, she's comfortable there, but is this program, does it have a trajectory of getting athletes to a high level? And if not, we have to create that in other ways. And so I would say, what tournaments are they going to? What coaches do they have connections to? What athletes have graduated that program, gone on to play at high levels? I think all these things you should be looking at as you're deciding on teams right now. Because I say she's right at the middle of like developmental and being competitive at the same time. So it's that sort of shift is happening right now. So now it's definitely time to figure out where is the competitiveness coming from and how is it being exposed to to coaches.
Thanks for following up with that, because that was actually related to the second question I submitted was, the team that she's on at this point. I was looking at their schedule and it's not what I expected. And I believe the team has competed at higher levels, but um, everybody's not on the same, everybody at this age, the athletes have
Yes.
different goals in life. And my daughter is very directed. And so we're just trying to figure out how we can get her among people who have the same goals in the next year or two. Yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Very good. And I definitely look for that. Um, excuse me, softball is challenging because it costs excuse me, it costs a lot. There are a lot of sheep's in or what do they say, wolves in sheep's clothing. And I think people say a lot of things. So I think really it's looking back at the track record. It's really looking back at what has history said about that program. Not where they want to be. Unfortunately, it's like where have they been, and I think that's really important to navigate this process. And people are like, man, you might as well just pay for them to go to school for how much you pay in softball. And it sucks, but at the same time, like you got to get on some of those exposure teams. You got to pay for the extra coaching. You got to do those things if the goal is to play at a high level.
That's the amazing questions. We actually had another submission who's not here live, but I kind of have categorized these.
Yeah.
Kim Timmons asked a similar question. Her daughter's 13, and she said, do we need to look for a travel team that focuses on recruiting? And I'll add to that question, how do you know if they're focusing on recruiting? Like, what would you look for?
Yeah, so I would say the types of showcases they're going to, types of tournament they're going to. There are a lot of teams. I think at first, if a travel team is still figuring out the whole recruiting process, they're going to try to find uh, showcases that say showcases or college coaches will be there. And I think that's great. But I think if you're not going to some of the states where softball is prominent, so like if your teams are not going to California and Arizona and Georgia and Texas, Florida, if they're not sort of going, I think even Nebraska has a pretty high level softball community. So like if they're not traveling to these places, Colorado, if they're not traveling to these places where other top teams are going to, that's probably the first indicator that maybe they're trying to figure it out, but they probably haven't figured it out yet. I would say the second thing is, again, who has gone through that particular program? What's sort of the trajectory from, 12U, 14U, 16U, 18U? Do they have those trajectories or are they just, they're the top at 14U? It's like, okay, like you can buy into it and believe in it and hopefully it works out. But if they don't have that sort of connection with coaches, then I think we have to find that and here's why, because between before junior year of high school, why a lot of people think that recruiting doesn't need to start sooner is because we can't technically talk to athletes as a Division I school until September 1st of their junior year, going into their junior year. So parents assume that the recruiting process doesn't start until then. But no, they've been on our radar for a while. They've been to our camps. They've done all the things that have got onto our radar. And so I've also, just in context, I've coached for a higher level Division I school in University of Washington, and now I work at a HBCU. So our trajectories are a little different, but we're still looking for athletes ahead of time. So at UW, we were recruiting eighth and ninth graders, or at least not recruiting, we were putting them on our watch list and they would get them to our camps. So with the teams, what I'm getting at with that is that the coaches become the liaison, the connecting piece between us and you guys as parents and family. And so like if your 14U team is the top of that level, but you don't know that they have these connections or are in communication with these coaches, those are questions you should probably ask, to kind of have a better understanding of, are they a team that think that can get there? And if not, like, do they know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, to get them connected? Because I think that's really important. So that sort of thing I would look for, what tournaments are you going to? What's the trajectory of the program itself? What other players have already been recruited from out of that program? And then if not, like, can the coaches say that they have connections at some of those places?
Awesome. Fire away.
That was really helpful to understand how that whole process works, because sometimes as parents, we don't really quite understand the whole travel, like if all travel ball is the same. I know it's not, but just how it all works together. And so that was really helpful how clear you were on that.
Yeah.
How do you feel about like college camps?
As far as like on their campus or
Yeah.
yeah, so let's be real. Depending on the level, high or highest of the level, there are layers to it. So like I always tell parents, so at the University of Washington, for instance, I was a volunteer assistant coach. And the camps that we ran, although we were looking for athletes, we also were getting like 200 people to come to the camp at the same time.
Mhm.
So I was a volunteer. I made zero money from the school, but I got paid $4,000 a month. And it came from the camps. So like the understanding of that, the raw, the real of that is that that's what happened. That's what happens there. But I think how we look at it, how old is your daughter?
She's a freshman.
Okay. So how I would look at it is in the eighth grade, ninth grade year, I would suggest going to the local schools, whether whatever level, because what you want to do right now is determine where her skill level matches to others in her age group. And
Okay.
you'll find that, and what players or people are attracted to that school. What players does that school attract? What level of play does that school attract? So you'll get that information locally. And then I think once you kind of have that understanding, then she can start pinpointing sort of that process of what other schools kind of fit that sort of level for her. It's necessary. It's an evil necessary because you also get to experience the campus. Like, what is it like around
Mhm.
the campus? What's it like in the campus? Also, experience the players' perspective because the players usually work those camps. So now you're getting an opportunity to, kind of ask questions amongst the players that are already there. Again, we can't necessarily talk to a lot of athletes in certain tournament environments. So
Yeah.
on our campus, you do get the opportunity to ask questions specifically to that coach. You get to know a little bit more about our coaching style, what we're looking for, what we're harping on in that space. So I think it's a necessary evil to that process, but also recognize some schools. I think if you're a junior, senior, and you haven't had any conversations with these coaches, but you're paying $200 to $300, $400 to go to
Yeah.
the camp, I would not advise that. But if you're in
Okay.
ninth grade, 10th grade locally, get a feel, understand. And then when you are starting to 10th grade, 11th grade, look at certain schools and you are trying to you're getting a little interest, I would say in those cases, get to those schools, pay that money. And I think look for camps that say prospect, because they'll usually have camps that are like, oh, like all skills, and they'll have
Yeah.
youth, of course, right? But you want to look for ones that like say prospect camps at those levels. Recruiting camp, because then like they're also looking for those players that potentially they want to recruit.
And then like so you're used to a D1 school. Are D2 and D3 kind of the same? situation?
Excuse me, y'all, my allergies are over here killing me. Um, but good question. So I've coached, actually, I didn't give you guys a background, but I've coached at every level possible in AIA D2, Division 1, community college. And so I would say D2, similar. I think it's just the timeline is different. So I would say definitely more open to sophomore, juniors for sure at the Division 2 level. D3, they're looking for, high academic athletes who probably have a little bit of money to pay for school because, or at least get high academics to get recruited for academic scholarships. So
Okay.
it wouldn't be as far as like cut off, don't go. And they also wouldn't charge you $400 to go to their camp either. They would probably be more realistic around 150, between 80 and 150, 180 at the most. So I think that's a little more reasonable to kind of cast your net in those
Yeah.
places as well, for sure. Yeah. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, that did. That was
Okay.
helpful.
Yeah. I love doing this, by the way. So like there's no questions that are
Okay, I'll ask another question.
off limits because I think I want to provide this for parents better. So
Do you how many do players send in letters of interest to schools?
yeah, it's a different touch. I like it because it's different than just the classic email, so you actually get a paper a paper letter, and I think sometimes they put like their picture, like a picture of like their profile or whatever in there. So yeah, I think those are always good touches. Yep, we do get those.
Does that like help with recruiting? Does
I
that,
mean,
or do you kind of already have your list of players?
yeah, you know what, like I think anything you do to stand out, that would be something that stands out because it's not the norm as much as you think it is. I would say it does stand out when you do receive handwritten letters from athletes. Um, but I think like in general, there are a couple of things that I really believe that we're like can stand out to coaches. And so I think like part of it is it goes back to why I run my program is I think a lot of athletes don't know what their strengths are, or what they offer to a program. And so then they don't sell that or market that to coaches in a way that they're
Yeah.
confident in it. So for me, like with my program, the goal is to always like help them highlight I always say, what are the three things that like you want coaches to know about you, and how do you show that in every aspect that you're doing, social media, emails, at the camps. How are you showcasing those things? And it doesn't have to be flashing light things, but it's like, hey, I'm really good at I'm really good at being a good teammate. I'm really good at,
Mhm.
strategically thinking about the game as a catcher, whatever it is. Like I'm really good at building a relationship with my catcher, and my pitcher as a catcher. Like these are things that like if they recognize what those things are, I think you highlight the heck out of those things, and I think it'll help.
Okay.
So to build on that, as I'm kind of going through this document and highlighting, one of the questions, a lot of them, and we can go high level too. Kim Timmons, my daughter is 13 and in 7th grade. We're from a small town that doesn't get a lot of visibility. So right now we're talking about how do you create this visibility? And we've talked about camps, we've talked about outreach. And so the high level question is like, when do you need to start thinking about all of these things? And another parent, Stephanie Wen, said, how early do you really need to start? So if you could start, and then we can get deeper into the weeds on some of these questions. That's like
Sure.
the big one.
Sure. So I do believe, as I mentioned, that 7th, 8th grade mark is the deciding, it should be a decision that's being made, that I want to play this sport at the next level. So 7th grade, I'm making this decision. 8th grade, I'm like, okay, I'm really gonna make this decision that I want to go all in on this particular sport. So we start there. I think then what you do, as I mentioned before, 8th grade is I would start finding the local tournaments. And if there's not local, like how close can you get to a school, get to those. And then I would use those more where my tournaments are going. Do they have camps or skills sessions with coaches at those tournaments. Okay, cool. So start there, start to get a feel for what coaches are talking about, what they're looking for. But that's a way to expose yourself at a young age, 7th, 8th grade, 9th grade year. I would say what we do, what I like to do is at 9th grade, we should have a top 50s list of schools that we're interested in. And I would cast a wide net. So I would say, I actually have this formula I got to figure out. I wrote it down somewhere that one of my players that I worked with created. So one is like the first five are like my dream top, like unreachable, but I'm gonna try my best to get there, top five, right? And then the next 10 are usually like what she say, like um reach, or it's a reach, it's still a reach. So it's like it's still something that is pretty high level, but like if I keep working at it, I'm in 9th grade, I keep working at it, I might have an opportunity to play there. I can probably play there. Then there's like 10 that are the reachables. So like it's like, all right, like I know where my skill is at. If I keep growing, I'm for sure going to be able to play there. And again, it can be in any division. And then there are like what did she say, like my 10 safety schools, right? And so then we're talking about like, all right, like if nothing else works out at this sort of high level, they have my major, they have my major, they're in an area I want to be in. They have the sport. Okay, cool. I'm gonna look at that. So then we kind of break it down in that sort of way. I have to give AB the exact breakdown when I find it. I'll send it to you. But I think you should start there. And I think any ways that you can get to not 50, but how can I get to some of those areas so I can get a feel and say, okay, I do like this and I like this about this school. I don't actually like this school. I'm gonna take it off the list, and it helps me narrow it down. And I will start again with the local ones and then again progress from there and keep dwindling that list down. I would say 10th grade, we really should be hitting up those bigger showcases. The sparklers, I think it's called NIT. I forgot what it's called. It's another one in Colorado at the same time. Some of those PGFs. I would get into those spaces, and I think what happens with those camps is they also have schools at those camps, usually that run tournaments at the beginning or end of those events. So I would say that'd be a good place to kind of catch multiple schools at one time that are usually high level, Oregon's and Washington's and Georgia's, and they usually host those camps at those tournaments. So that's helpful to kind of get there. And then I would say, yeah, by the 10th grade, 9th, 11th grade year, you should be hitting those sort of 5 to 10 schools that you're really, really interested in. And like hitting them hard, emails, right? Social media tagging, getting to their schools, getting to their camps. By your junior year, if you're really interested in that school, you should have been to that school at least twice. So to at least kind of get a feel for that. So yeah, I would say that's kind of, I don't know if I answered the question all the way, but that's kind of what I had.
Yeah, and you also answered another question. A lot of these overlap. One of the questions that you also answered in that stint was, is it better to start with a smaller school and then try to move up? And you're answering that, right?
Yeah.
You got to start with a list. I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest mistake. I see this a lot with my one-on-one athletes when we touch on recruiting. It's like, I can't help you until you give me a starting spot, right? Like,
yeah,
do you want to go far away from home? Like I have athletes that are from the Midwest. I wish I could go back. I didn't know I could play softball in Florida. Like,
yeah, it's
when
true.
you give them that option, they're like, oh, you mean I don't have to go to the college just 30 minutes down the road? Which no shame on that. That's what I did and I loved it. So it's like, how do you know unless you open up the possibilities for them?
I would also say like there's NCSA, it's a sports recruiting company. I'm not advocating for them as far as you getting that service, but they have a lot of free services as far as like a list of Division I schools, Division II schools, Division III schools, and where they're located, as well as I think even coaches' information sometimes. So use the heck out of those spaces that have created these databases that you can easily pull up. I think Scout Recruit is another one that's the same way. So I think those spaces, you can get a lot of information just as far as like where to start, what's the school information if you don't want to look them up one by one, although I recommend that sometimes once you get the list a little bit lower. But yeah.
So good. That Coach Carter, this is awesome. Tessa, do you have any questions that you want to ask live?
Well,
like,
I feel kind of out of the loop because I just missed the last little bit because my dang phone died. So sorry about that. Um, I'm kind of echoing some of the things that were said previous to that question about living in a small town area, not having that exposure. Like, how do you make those connections for your daughter? My daughter's a seventh grader going into eighth grade.
yeah,
So
yeah.
how do you make those connections? How do we
I
get her
also,
connected with that next level?
yeah, I also
She's
think
doing
so.
the
Go ahead, sorry.
um, USA softball tryout in Kansas City in
Nice.
April. So hopefully that will help.
That would really help. Yeah, that would for sure help. And if not, even I think not even if not, I think so. Was she invited to that?
Yeah, she did
Yeah.
a tryout and qualified for the second
Yeah.
round.
So
So
she's already on some people's databases, I'm sure, because of that. And so I think like when she's there, if she could, hopefully she's not too shy, she might be, but I would say like, how can I stay connected with some of those folks? Whether it be like grab their email, and just be like, hey, like, if I'm going to this process, I'm from a small town, I would love to get some insight from you, as far as like what I should be doing, even like they probably give them like they give them feedback if they get selected or not. So yeah, using that feedback would be really great, right? And I think that's a really good space to kind of figure that where she's at compared to some of the other people in the country. So that's actually a really good opportunity. I
And you
also
guys
think
are
as
from
a
Nebraska, right?
yeah, we're from Kearney.
Yeah. So a couple of the girls that have made Team USA for those things have actually attended the retreat. So you might remember Gretchen.
Mhm.
And so when Ashley is telling you some of these things too, of like, think laterally as well, because some of those families are, like Gretchen plays for the ACEs organization, which, if you might be familiar, she also has to travel to Kansas City. And when you start connecting with those parents, they're going to want to answer it for you as well. And so if you can connect with more of those, even at the tryouts, whether she makes it or not, and I really hope that she does,
Yeah.
it's what Coach Carter is trying to get you to see is like, it never hurts to ask. Like, I think sometimes there's this taboo, and I can speak to it, right? Like, I still have nightmares and scarring, and I'm 33, and I'm like, could I have, I don't know. Like, I didn't know enough about recruiting. And so the more you ask, the more you turn over stones. Like,
Yeah, and I think it's just that fear of like if I ask, people are gonna be like, seriously, like
Yeah.
you're asking for your daughter to get some exposure, and I don't want it to come off like that at all. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, if she can ask, you can feed her the words, but I think that's always better too.
yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Any follow-up questions for anyone live? I know we're almost over on time. We kind of hit all of our questions. One of the questions that I see, things to consider when picking your top schools. We just had an amazing guest speaker that's going to be aired tomorrow on the podcast. So when you're listening to this, if you're listening to this episode on the podcast, go back and listen to the Malia Andrews podcast, which Coach Carter, are you
I
familiar?
love Malia. I
You
saw
know
that you were
Malia.
doing that with her. I said, what?
Well,
Malia
so
is awesome.
Malia's mom coached Kara, who's on our team. So it's like the softball world is just like blowing
What?
my mind right now. I know.
Wow. Yeah, her mom and I coached the 14U team in Washington together.
No way. Okay.
Yeah.
This is too cool.
I actually knew Malia I saw Malia when she was like in eighth grade, and I was like, she's gonna be good. And she had the opportunity to play at a lot of different schools, but she chose Western Washington. I'm glad she did, because it's just a really good fit for her. They value her a lot, and she's just thriving there really well.
That right there, things to consider when picking your top schools. Like just go listen to that podcast episode.
Yeah.
Here's one that will kind of like, this pulls on my heartstrings. What if she doesn't get recruited? Is there still a chance of her playing somewhere?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things though is that we get stuck in this comparison cycle, because we see big schools, but there are so many schools out there. And I think where people get lost is, again, if they're getting older and they haven't got the responses that they want. First of all, are they doing the work to get the responses that they want, which is part of the problem. And then I think second part of that um, is that if they are doing the work and they're not getting the responses, like I think at some point, depending on how old they are, like knock on different doors. And I think that's the struggle that they struggle with is I'm still trying to go after the University of Washington as a junior. Like that probably just isn't the best. That's not the best response to that process. And I think it goes back to literally what you said and what I said about Malia, is that I think like you have to understand that even though like someone doesn't see your value, they're not recruiting you, it doesn't mean you're not valuable. So that means there's always a place where they're going to value what you bring to the table. You got to find that place. And that's the hardest part. But I think the more that you put into this process, the more you're going to find those people that value who you are. And I think that's the part we have to get to. I would also say to this is that I think why I go back to what I said earlier about the three things that you want to demonstrate or showcase to coaches and not knowing what the three things are that I'm really good at, is I think about like I teach hitting. And so with hitting, I said there's 4 different types of batters. And as we talk through 4 different types of batters, we talk about what are their roles, right? And so if I am a contact hitter trying to be a power hitter and I'm measuring myself of a power hitter and I never succeed as a power hitter because I never hit home runs, I'm only hitting pop flies, then I'm gonna feel like I failed or I struggle because I am trying to measure myself based on something that I'm not. Versus if I went back to what is a contact hitter, someone who's gritty, who's going to get the ball, who's going to get the job done, who's going to hit behind runners, who's going to move runners, right? You might bunt sometimes, you might hit behind the runner sometimes, you might hit slow rollers, but they're going to be great. You might hit balls in the outfield, more to line drive. If I measure myself and that being successful as that, I'm going to have more success than being a home run hitter. And so I think like for athletes in general and why I'm so glad that your athletes are in this particular program is because with like things like mental performance training and Coach AB and myself is we're trying to get to the root of our identity, our why and our strengths. And I think once we can understand and navigate that process, we can freely showcase that in our emails. We can freely showcase that in our social media. We can freely showcase that when we're at camps. And if they can lead with those things, that's going to put them in a much better space than again trying to be something that they're not. So I think that's important to this process as well.
That just put like the most beautiful bow on this. We appreciate your time so much. And I have to call this out because you are humble and I know that you're just here to serve, but you also, this is your living and your impact on girls. And so you have this expertise. What is the best way that parents can work with you? I know right now you're doing social media audits, right? Are you still doing those?
Yep.
So you're offering those. We can have that link as well if you want to book Ashley. She'll literally, and this has been so cool for me too, is she'll go to your daughter's recruiting profiles and give you real-time feedback. There's some great examples in her 360 athlete group as well for parents where you can literally see not only what she's looking at, but she's going to give you recommendations as well. I wish I would have had that. That would have been amazing. And then she also has her 360 athlete program and, one-on-one coaching as well. So we're all about elevating the field of mental performance. And I would bring in any recruiting expert, but truly like the fact that Ashley understands this from all levels as a mental performance coach, like I didn't want to just bring in someone that knew recruiting, like truly Ashley will care about your athlete as a whole person. And 360 athlete is exactly that. So it all clicks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you all's time. And you have to answer some questions to join the parent group, but it's there, 360 Athlete on Facebook group, on Facebook, the 360 Athlete. And what it does is we every Tuesday go live. I always post in there different things that I see. I do audit social media spaces, and then I just post it in there so people can kind of see what I'm looking at or what I see about those social media profiles and things like that. So check it out.
Amazing. Well, I will get that in our Fearless Warrior portal for you guys as members. You guys will have access to all those links. You don't have to wait. When the replay comes out, we'll make sure that we get those. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, check the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you so much.